In American history, there have been lots of black men with heroic deeds, but there's a man amongst all that stands out, a black man with a large vision, a man that moved from a slave to a leader. This is the story of Frederick Douglass, who was formerly enslaved and became a prominent activist, author, and public speaker. Stick around as we unravel the mystery behind the reason why there will never be another Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was born into slavery in 1818 in Talbot County, Maryland. His mother was an enslaved black woman, and his father was a decent white man. Frederick was born with his mother's name, Bailey, but later took his father's name, Douglass, when he escaped. When he was little, he was taken to live with his maternal grandmother, Betty Bailey, and was later separated from her at the age of 6 to live and work on the Y House plantation in Maryland. After he got there, he was given to Lucretia Auld and sent to work by Thomas, her husband, at his brother, Hugh, place in Baltimore. Douglass taught himself to write with the help of Sophia, his wife. She taught him the foundation of writing by teaching him the English alphabet. By the time William Freeland hired him, he could teach other enslaved people to write using the Bible. Not long after, word went around about Frederick Douglass's effort to teach his fellow enslaved people how to read and write. That was an extremely brave move on Frederick's part, considering the fact that it was against the law. Any enslaved person caught going against the law was asked to strip, then flogged several times till they bleed. Do you think it was thoughtful of Douglass to be selfless, even after knowing the punishment attached to it? We can only give our opinions. We cannot change the past. But one thing we can change is our limited knowledge of the Black history. The best way to do that, though, is by hitting that subscribe button. Thomas Auld heard about it and sent him to Edward Covey, known for treating enslaved people under his charge with brutality. Douglass was just 16 then, but still suffered regular whipping by Covey. One day, when Douglass couldn't bear the beating anymore, he pushed Covey to the ground, and from that day onwards, Covey never laid his hands on him again. Frederick Douglass tried to escape several times, all to no avail, but in 1838, he finally succeeded and left Covey's farm to board a train to Havre de Grace, Maryland. They traveled through Delaware before arriving in New York at the house of abolitionist David Ruggles. Upon his arrival to New York, he got married in September 1838 to Anna Murray, a free black woman from Baltimore whom he met while in captivity with the Aulds. They both had 5 children together. After their marriage, Frederick and Anna moved to New Bedford, Massachusetts, where they met Nathan and Mary Johnson, a married couple. The Johnsons inspired the young couple to take the surname Douglass. After a while, Douglass began attending meetings of the abolitionist movement, where he met William Lloyd Garrison, one of the leading proponents calling for an immediate end to slavery. They became friends, and through Garrison's support, Douglass became one of the most sought-after speakers on the abolitionist circuit. He also lent his voice to the emerging women's rights movement. In 1843, Douglass became one of the American Anti-Slavery Society's 100 Conventions Project, a 6-month tour through the United States. Douglass was physically assaulted several times by those opposed to the abolitionist movement. During one ruthless attack, when Douglass was in Indiana, he got his hands broken and never fully recovered from the injury. As a result, he couldn't regain the full use of his hands. Douglass finally printed one of his autobiographies, The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, in 1845 through the help of Garrison and some other abolitionists. In the narrative, Douglass wrote, "From my earliest recollection, I date the entertainment of a deep conviction that slavery would not always be able to hold me within its foul embrace. In the darkest hours of my career in slavery, this living world of faith, spirit, and hope departed not from me, but remained like ministering angels to cheer me through the gloom." The book became popular, and some critics argued that the book was too good to have been written by a black mind. But regardless of this, Douglass became a success outside the ranks of reformers. Douglass's popularity made him scared, because he felt Auld might want to reclaim him as the man he enslaved. So he traveled to England, where he stayed for 2 years until 2 groups of supporters negotiated payment for his freedom. Douglass got back to the United States around the 1850s. A radical abolitionist, John Brown, stayed with him in the United States as he planned a raid on the U.S. military arsenal at Harper's Ferry, because he believed the only way to abolish slavery was through armed insurrection. Unfortunately, Brown got caught and was hanged for being the brain behind the attack. After this, Douglass published the newspaper called The North Star and became actively involved in the movement for women's rights. On the newspaper's masthead, he inserted the motto, "Right is of no sex, the truth is of no color, God is the father of us all, and we are brethren," showing both Douglass's anti-slavery and pro-women's rights views. Frederick Douglass was the only African American to attend the Seneca Falls Convention, a gathering of women's rights activists in New York. During the meeting, he spoke forcefully and said, "In this denial of the right to participate in government, not merely the degradation of woman and the perpetuation of a great injustice happens, but the maiming and repudiation of one half of the moral and intellectual power of the government of the world." He later included coverage of women's rights issues in the pages of the North Star. The name was later changed to Frederick Douglass Paper before the start of the Civil War. During the American Civil War, Frederick Douglass served as an advisor to President Abraham Lincoln. Douglass was crucial in persuading Lincoln to harm enslaved people and prioritize abolition. During Reconstruction, Douglass became the highest-ranking black official of his time and advocated for full civil rights for black people and women. In 1863, after the Emancipation Proclamation, which ended the practice of slavery, Douglass disagreed with President Abraham Lincoln because he didn't use the proclamation to grant formerly enslaved people the right to vote after they fought alongside the soldiers of the Union Army. Douglass and Lincoln reconciled following Lincoln's assassination in 1865. The same year, the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, and 15th Amendment were passed to the U.S. Constitution, which outlawed slavery, granted formerly enslaved people citizenship and equal protection under the law, and protected all citizens from racial discrimination in voting. Douglass was asked to speak at the dedication of the Emancipation Memorial in Washington, D.C.'s Lincoln Park in 1876. After delivering the speech, Frederick Douglass immediately wrote to the National Republican newspaper in Washington, which published his letter 5 days later on April 19th, criticizing the statue's design and suggesting the park could be improved by more dignified monuments of free black people. "The Negro here, though rising, is still on his knees and nude," Douglass wrote. "What I want to see before I die is a monument representing the Negro, not couchant on his knees like a four-footed animal, but erect on his feet like a man." Frederick Douglass was a prominent abolitionist who lent his support to the women's suffrage movement early on, and he remained steadfast in his conviction that women should be conferred civil rights equal to men. In 1866, Douglass Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony founded the American Equal Rights Association, which demanded universal suffrage. Though the group disbanded due to growing tension between women's rights activists and African American rights activists, Douglass remained influential in both movements, championing the cause of equal rights. One of the duties of a minister in a foreign land is to cultivate good social as well as civil relations with the people and government to which he's sent. These are the words of Frederick Douglass. In the late 1870s, many former Confederate states began passing laws restricting black voting rights and enforcing public segregation. These Jim Crow laws, named after a racist blackface minstrel show character, were not challenged by the federal government. The drive for civil rights waned under cries for reconciliation and unity from white political and community leaders. In 1888, the Republican presidential candidate, Benjamin Harrison, sought Frederick Douglass's endorsement to appeal to black voters in New York. Douglass agreed. Harrison won the election due to the black Northern vote. Harrison chose Douglass to represent the United States as U.S. Minister to Haiti a few months into his presidency. Harrison was impressed with Douglass's persuasive communication skills. He hoped the famed black American enslaved could establish an empathetic relationship with Haiti that no white envoy had accomplished. Douglass accepted the nomination in July 1889, writing to Secretary of State James Blaine that he was touched by the confidence expressed in the possible influence he may exert, and understood the importance of the mission to work towards the peace, welfare, and prosperity of the Haitian people. Upon arriving in Haiti, Douglass cultivated a friendship with President Hippolyte and his former minister, Atenor Furman. He sent reports back to Secretary Blaine after observing the Haitian people. In Port-au-Prince, Douglass played a crucial role in the diplomatic conflict between the United States and Haiti. His experience in Haiti would not only lead to his appointment as one of Haiti's representatives at the 1893 Chicago World Fair, but also significantly impacted his political thought. Now, to the uniqueness of Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was unique because he was the first African-American man to receive a vote for president at a major political party convention. The voice came from the Kentucky delegation during the Republican National Convention in 1888. He was also the first African-American to receive a vice presidential nomination. Frederick Douglass died in 1895. Throughout his lifetime, he achieved much, including racial equality and women's rights advocacy before his death. That's why, till today, he'll remain an iconic figure celebrated as a symbol of freedom and the pursuit of justice. His speeches and quotes will continue to inspire generations of individuals fighting for civil rights and social justice. His impacts on American society are still evident today and serve as a reminder of the importance of education and the necessity of confronting injustice. Do you know about any more of his achievements? Let us know in the comment. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this.